Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Scares That Shaped Us, a podcast about horror writers and the stories that made them. I'm your host, Matthew Jackson. We've got a great one for y'all this week. I know I say that every week, but it's true every week, and it's especially true this week. We are going to talk to Valkyrie Loughcrewe, one of my favorite new horror writer discoveries, personally, of the past year. Val has written two amazing new books that both came out over the past 6 months. One of them is called Decrepit Ritual, and the other one is called Puppet's Banquet. We are going to talk about them both, and we're going to do our second ever video game episode. We're going to dive into go see 28 years later. As someone who very often gets tired of zombie stories and zombie themed stories just because I experienced so many of them in my life, it was something that really blew me away. So, yes, 28 years later, good movie. Go watch it. That's enough of me rambling. Let's head over now to our interview with Valkyrie Loughcrewe. Joining us this week on The Scares That Shaped Us is a rising star in the horror world. Their previous works include Cromcruick and Spook Show, and this year alone there are already two books out: Decrepit Ritual from Ghoulish Books and Puppet's Banquet from Tenebrous Press. Valkyrie Loughcrewe, welcome to the show.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going great. I am so glad to have you here. I first became aware of your work when Max Booth at Ghoulish Books was kind enough to send over an advance ebook copy of Decrepit Ritual. And I love that book so much that I then went out and bought it. So I have an ebook and I have a hard copy now.
Cool.
And then when I found out like you had a new thing coming from Tenebrous, I had to go get Puppet's Banquet. So I want to talk about both of these books because I think they're both wonderful in their own ways. For those who don't know, could you offer a little teaser about what Decrepit Ritual is?
Decrepit Ritual is a book about someone who's completely lost all hope. You, the reader, have completely lost all hope, and in your final hours of despair, you come across a videotape of mysterious origin that contains an absolutely wild movie from like almost like a movie from a completely different timeline with its own context, or is it even a movie at all? And it takes you kind of get taken on this journey with these characters where like they're heading to a cabin in the woods in a dead forest, and but something's obviously wrong because like it's not like a group of teens. You've got like a futuristic soldier, someone who seems to be a slasher already, and then like violent punks and like someone who might be a wizard. So it's kind of like almost like a swords and sorcery trippy VHS weird novella.
Yeah, it is wonderful and it just kept surprising me in so many different ways. I wanted to ask because I know you work on RPGs as well as prose fiction. You work in that realm as a creator. And it was very sort of, it very much felt like a little bit of an adventuring party with the characters moving through this movie because they each have their own sort of skill sets and goals, and it feels like a quest with all of the different secret passages and things like that that entails. What were the origins of this book for you? Did it start as sort of an RPG way of thinking? Where did it begin?
I actually wrote Decrepit Ritual initially before I even started messing around with RPGs. I maybe had begun playing Call of Cthulhu again around that time, but I hadn't played RPGs since I was very young. It really came from like just this journey I was going on with studying like reading like I read a lot of Grant Morrison. I started getting into psychedelics. I was studying like occultism and stuff and really just trying to get deep into the guts of like what fiction is. And then I started developing this like mythos, this like which I call Lords of the Video Wasteland, which has never really felt like the right name, but it's the only name I've got for it. And like it's the Surgery Head music project that I do, the like electronic music project. Not all of the albums, but some of the albums, certainly the early albums, are set in that mythos and are like talking about all the different kind of things that are going on in that world and the origins of that world and stuff. And I watched a movie called Lake Nowhere, which is this really great 40-minute like slasher movie. And there's a character in that who gets like mutilated and ends up like wrapping her head up in bandages. So she looks like a fucking surgery head, which in that kind of mythos is a character who's kind of someone who's stripped themselves of their own identity and become a kind of liminal figure who can only really observe, and the only things that they do are kind of like um it's not readily obvious the kind of things that they get up to, but they're just like these mysterious cryptid figures. But a big element to that mythos is that certain characters, especially those involved in like the occult, are aware that they're in kind of a movie universe. So in this movie, Lake Nowhere literally ends with this bandage head wrapped character, um, like doing some kind of weird mystical thing and then turning and looking right at the camera, and that gave me almost like a schizophrenic kind of like what's going on, like I felt like reality was totally melting down, and I had this weird thought that the characters from in that movie outside of the forest that they came to meet the slasher was just an apocalyptic world. And so I just sat down and I was like, I want to, it was a really dumb like idea where like I want to write like a slasher thing where it's a normal slasher thing, but at the very end you realize that these people came from an apocalyptic world, um, eh, and just wanted to get out of their apocalyptic world to enjoy some semblance of like rural life or a community with nature, and then the price is they're going to be killed by a slasher. So I sat down to write that, but then I was like, when I started writing the characters, I was like, well, one of these is a corpse monger. One of these is these two guys are like pit face gang members, and this person is straight up just an interdimensional like trooper. And then I was like, what the fuck? And that was the process of writing that was just like me going, what the fuck? What like just the ideas coming at me, and then fucking consulting with fucking spirits and shit, using random word generators and stuff, and just kind of like not AI, this is before AI, literal just like random words to jog my imagination. And then arguing with the random word generators when they seem to be pushing an idea that I was in a really out there mind space when I was writing that one. And then eventually just wrote it all the way to the finish line, and then I was like, okay, that's pretty cool what I ended up with. So I'm pretty happy with how it turned out because it's just really like I don't know, it was the artifact I brought back from that like journey into like really spaced out territory.
Yeah, I mean, and it reads that way, and I mean that very complimentary. It reads like you were uh, going out as far as you could in search of ideas and just sort of incorporating them very instinctively into something that is wonderful. And that book, there are occasionally moments when you read something, read a sentence or a paragraph or something, and you go like, okay, I am on this person's level. I like this. I want to keep going with this. And for me, it was you dropped a reference to the mutilator in there, but not just a reference to the mutilator, the reference to the goofy fall break song that opens the mutilator. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I am going to get along with this writer. I'm going to follow this writer wherever they take me. Which brings us, I guess, to Puppets Banquet, which is another extremely imaginative, strange journey, but I feel like comes from a very different place. Could you give our listeners a taste of what they can expect from Puppets Banquet?
Puppets Banquet is like I'd say if Decrepit Ritual is out there in like the multicolored, Puppets Banquet is in the black and white. Like it's deep, like into the black and white, into the darkness, into the nightmare realm. There's actually a scene in Decrepit Ritual which where someone approaches a house and like a little girl talks about these horrible things that live in that house that they like they fuck you up just by looking at them and that you shouldn't go inside. Decrepit Ritual is Puppets Banquet is going inside that house. It's about the really nasty stuff, like the real stuff. Like it's all about at the core of it, it's kind of like an exploration of the nightmarish idea that like doctors are like the new priests in our culture, and that in the sense that they have this cultural protection around them, and like this like no one they can do whatever they want, and no one they're so protected by culture because everyone thinks they're so fucking perfect or whatever. And I'm not anti-medicine or anything like that, but like the institution of medical institutions are really fucked up, and then just exploring that as a nightmare, and then it's spiraling out into all kinds of places. Because when I started writing it, it um it was purely a medical horror thing, and then all the fucking genocide broke out in Palestine, and then all this like other like I couldn't keep medical horror separate from everything else. So I had there, so the outside world kept creeping in. So there's more elements of like journalists going missing and stuff like that. The types of people who put their lives on the line to like te tell people about um the real horrible shit that's going on behind the scenes. Like there's just like a thrumming hive of like really nasty darkness in that one. And but it's a lot spookier. It's a lot more Irish. It's a lot more like folklore, fairy tale, like fairy tale in the like the kinds of fairy tales that we tell each other over a campfire in the Irish countryside, not like Hans Christian Andersen type of fairy tales. Yeah, it's really I find it really hard to pin these things down to like a coherent sentence because they're really just like these squirmy. It's like I see it almost like a squirm, especially Puppets Banquet as like squirmy soil, where like I want the reader to like get their fingers into the soil and plant their own seeds in it and stuff. Like I specifically put things in the Puppets Banquet plot that don't make sense that I to try and make the reader fill in that gap and spark their imagination and see how they feel about it and stuff. Not in the sense where I always come back to this. I always think about this Neil Breen movie where he put a bunch of doll heads in the sand and people in the Q&A were like, "What do the doll heads mean?" And he was like, "Well, what do you think that?" And everyone was like, "Boo!" Because it was obvious that he didn't fucking know what he was doing. Where like, but like I have, Puppets Banquet makes sense to me, but there's intentional contradictions in it that I want to, that's the soil. That's where people can grow things in their imagination or whatever.
Well, and I read or heard you say in another interview that Puppets Banquet is the sort of book that probably should be read twice because because the context changes. Once you know where it's going, then you can go back and fill in more stuff. And so I'm really interested in reading it again and seeing what it does to me a second time. Um, you mentioned music, and I know like you are a musician. You already mentioned your musical projects and that element of your creativity. How and I mean you talked about the mythos being linked between Decrepit Ritual and your music. How important is music to you on just a sentence by sentence level, right? The act of composition, sitting down and writing. Do you incorporate music into your writing routine?
Yes. Yes, definitely. I don't think about it very consciously much, but definitely I was listening to a lot of like experimental techno stuff when I was writing Crom Cruick, and I was trying to write because Crom Cruick's written in like verse, and I was trying to write scenes to like the beats of certain songs to give them I don't want to say cinematic. I feel like cinematic's like a dirty word in writing books, but like I wanted to give them the same feel that like an Italian horror movie would have, because like those movies were always like very synced to music, and it gave them a very specific feel. So I wanted to try and see if I could recreate that in like this book in verse. And Puppets Banquet was definitely inspired by black metal, like a specific like industrial black metal band called the Axis of Perdition. I mean, the story itself was come up with by me and my friend Dan when we were in college, but the actual sitting down to write it came from listening to Axis of Perdition and being really inspired by how creepy their stuff, and how textural their music was. And Decrepit Ritual was very much inspired by like doom metal and synthwave, specifically like Electric Wizard and Perturbator. I was listening to a lot of them both. But there is one scene in Decrepit Ritual that I associate with one particular song. There's a synthwave artist called Limatos, I think it is, who did a remix of a song called Comme des Enfants by someone called Cour de Parat. And it's this really great synthwave song with like vocals over it. But the scene where Sasha is knife fighting the monsters in the church while Splatter's in like the abyss, like in my
Mhm.
head that scene is like cut right to that song, and every time I hear that song I think about that scene. But and then like Spook Show is total death doom metal. Spook Show is just like a this book where just like it leads to just absolute doom, and in my head it's like specifically like the band Hooded Menace, which I think are meant to be are problematic, and people, you're not supposed to like them now, but I'm not entirely sure what the crack is there. But yeah, just grody doom death metal. Yeah, so yeah, music really helps with the old writing for sure.
I also wanted to ask. I read an interview with you where you were talking about Crom Cruick and talking about using tarot cards to help you lay out the story.
Yeah.
And you talked about summoning spirits and random word generators and things like that when working on Decrepit Ritual. Is that a deliberate creative approach? Like when you start a project, uh, is that sort of esoteric approach important, or is that something that you fall back on to kind of get the juices flowing as you go?
A little bit of both. It depends on the context. Like Crom Cruick is such a big ensemble that and I did this before with like a film script I wrote with a friend that never got made, but like where I did this thing where I drew like Crom Cruick is such a big ensemble and it's working with such big themes that I had to narrow it down in some way. So I'd get like two tarot cards, and that would be like two characters, and then the middle tarot card would be their relationship. And I do that 4 or 5 times, and then I'd figure out like what's happening with these guys and where does it go, and then I'd like arrange that into a story. That's I think Alejandro Jodorowsky invented that method, or definitely is a proponent of that method. And then with again with Decrepit Ritual, it's just so I was trying to as I was saying, I was trying to go out to the very edges of my imagination and beyond. So I was trying to get like external help in to try and kind of push myself outwards rather than just like doing a bunch of drugs or whatever. I was trying to like pull stuff into um and then Puppets Banquet, I didn't really do any of that. I Puppets Banquet just kind of like flowed pretty well. And Spook Show, I was working on Spook Show for like 16 years. Like I wrote it as a movie, I wrote it as a comic, and then I wrote it as a book. So I didn't really maybe it's very possible that during the writing of the book maybe I consulted some tarot or something to try and help me through a scene. But I've really found with Puppets Banquet, I just like honestly, I had a friend ask me the other day, like, how do you write scenes in books? How do you make them work? And I was like, that's exactly the question I'm asking myself right now because I'm kind of in a bit of a block period. I'm kind of like, how the fuck did I write Puppets Banquet? I don't know how I managed to do that. I just did it. But with um, oh my God, I've totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, those tools are just they're so wired. They're just so like wired to deep subconscious processes and stuff that like they're really helpful from finding out what the story's supposed to be. Because I'm a person who um at least I used to, and maybe I still do in some to some degree, suffer from just having ideas that are just too big and too complicated. So I need to simplify them, which is what I found like when I was experimenting with psychedelics and stuff. You get these big mythic images that help you really like go like, okay, the story can just be that. It doesn't have to be a million different complicated things trying to explain themselves to you. It can just be this like bedrock like mythic image or whatever. But yeah, it really depends. Right now, at the moment, I have like four books that I want to write, and but I'm currently living on like a co-op, and I'm like building a cabin, and I'm trying to help people with their little projects and stuff. So I'm very much like in the real physical world right now, and I'm finding it kind of difficult to connect with the imagination. But I think I just need to I gotta push through and just write something new. I don't know.
Well, I will look forward to whatever it is. I'm very curious now about this tarot method, and I'm gonna have to go read up on Jodorowsky's use of it because I was just gifted my first ever tarot deck by a friend
Mm.
of mine, and I'm kind of hope I'm similarly in a bit of a slump creatively, and I'm hoping that that will sort of provide some juice to get me out of that. But I want to move over to the story that you brought for us because this was so much fun. Um, this was exactly my shit. This thing we're going to talk about the 1988 arcade game Splatterhouse, which
Yes,
is
indeed.
a horror themed side scrolling arcade game published by Namco in '88, and this was something that I had never experienced. I my arcade experience growing up was very vanilla, very Space Invaders, that kind of thing, and I was so thankful that I looked this game up and it's available in the PlayStation Store right now. So listeners, if you haven't played this game and you want to, you can go pick it up at the PlayStation Store. There's a version of it compatible with current PlayStations, and so I played through a lot of this. There are also playthroughs online. It's not a long game. You can go watch the playthroughs and get what we're talking about. But Val, you brought this wonderful thing to us. What do you remember about your first experience with Splatterhouse?
Well, my first experience with Splatterhouse was, I think, pretty illegal. Although depending on what country you're in, video game media piracy is not illegal in Ireland, believe it or not. It's a bit of a gray area, but it's essentially not illegal. But basically, my parents had a friend who was a absolutely cracked at pirating video games. He had I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say all the stuff he had because I know a certain company can be pretty litigious. um, but we got from him MAME, multi-arcade machine emulator, which was emulator for an arcade machine, and it came with every single arcade game ever made. So that was incredibly fun. Me and my sister and my cousins would gather around the computer and just be, "What's this?" And we'd hit it and load it up, and sometimes the games wouldn't work, and it was just like this endless just like well of like crazy just different video games. And yeah, one day I stumbled across Splatterhouse and immediately was struck by its like incredible art style and atmosphere. Just the atmosphere of it. It felt like well, I don't know why, but when I was a kid, I always thought the game was set in Spain. There was something that felt very European about it. Now I know it was highly influenced by Italian horror films, which I didn't know at the time. And yeah, the gore, the fucking the grimdark color palette, the power, the physical power of this masked protagonist who can just punch these ghouls and they explode. And it was really appealing. And then uh, I've always been a big fan of games that have lots of different enemies, like knowing not knowing what kind of cool creature might come next is always a huge draw for me in playing video games and completing them, which is why I've been very dissatisfied about a lot of modern games because enemy variety seems to be a thing that game developers have really skimped on for the last like 20 years. But like that was a huge draw. Every level of Splatterhouse has these incredible creatures, the bloated crawling fetuses from level two, the evil cross, the surrounded by floating heads, the uh famous Biggie man with his bag over his head and his chainsaw arms. Like I couldn't complete it. Well, the first time I played it, my sister went off and complained that was too scary. So my dad made me shut it off. But and then later on I found out there were sequels for the Sega Mega Drive, which was the console I grew up with. I didn't have one. I had to emulate it, and the sequels are great. It's just yeah, just a really great experience. I've always I was a big scaredy cat growing up, but I was always drawn to horror, and especially I'm when I became a teenager, because I didn't see Splatterhouse and immediately fall in love with it. It made a huge impression on me, and I thought about it a lot, but I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna be really into it and look up everything because I was like 9 years old or something. But when I turned maybe 14 or 15 and I started getting into game emulation, I was like, oh yeah, Splatterhouse, I remember that. And I played the games. I thought they were amazing. Um, I got into the Splatterhouse fan website, West Mansion, and I joined the forum and I made loads of really cool friends there. Mike Wazian, Corpsemonger. That's his online handle that I've now put into my Video Wasteland mythos as the gore worshipping like black metal cultist. He wrote amazing Splatterhouse fan fiction that was like Clive Barker quality. So I became friends with him then, and like that website had all the sprites for all the creatures. So even though I couldn't beat the games without spamming the save, the emulator save feature, I was able to see what all the creature designs were and stuff, and download the soundtracks and everything. And it was just like, as someone who was really getting into filmmaking, but like really getting into horror films and going back and discovering the 80s splatter movies and the Italian stuff, and slasher movies, getting really into slasher movies. Splatterhouse just like brings them together in this beautiful way where you've got creatures straight out of The Thing, straight out of Return of the Living Dead, straight out of Evil Dead, but you're playing as this fucking hulking monster with this cursed mask, and you get the gamut of slasher weapons. You get a machete and a chainsaw and a huge 2x4 with a nail in it. You get shears at one point. Like it was just like a huge party, like a huge celebration of all the stuff that I really really loved, all coming together in this really really cool thing. And the storyline of it's really cool. The lore of it's really cool. Like it was just so incredibly creative, and like the people who worked on it really cared about it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as a side-scrolling arcade thing, it starts like as something quite simple, or it appears quite simple in that you're playing a guy called Rick who goes into this spooky mansion with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend disappears, and he dies apparently, and is reanimated by basically Jason's hockey mask that carries a curse, and he has to fight his way through this mansion. And it's like you said, it's like the horror section at a video store exploded all over the screen. It is everything all at once. Um, it's a guy fighting his way through a sentient house, but he has, in his own way, become kind of a monster because he is very much a Jason Voorhees. Like he has the coveralls, and he's a hulking figure that carries these weapons, and it's just delightful going through and seeing all of these horrific creatures and the way they're rendered. And there's one monster in particular that I love where it's basically a zombie with like an oversized brain, and you hit it and the head falls off, and then the head flies at you after you've killed the body. I love that. I love the giant hulking monster with chainsaw hands. I love it's just so fun and evocative. But you mentioned the lore, and I have not dug very deep into this lore, uh, nor have I experienced the sequels at all. Um, what about the lore drew you in and got you so into the fan sites and things like that?
Well, the first of all, like the first thing that really I think it impresses anyone who got far enough in Splatterhouse to make them realize that there's something going on here a little bit more than just some kind of cash in is the big twist in the middle of Splatterhouse 1 where the main story is that you're playing as first of all these are just a beautiful string of words that it really evoke an atmosphere to me. You play as parapsychology students who are going to the mansion of Dr. West, who is the guy from Lovecraft's Reanimator, to interview him about parapsychology, which is already like, what the fuck, this is crazy. And then it's a dark and stormy night and they get attacked by monsters. The girlfriend Jennifer, which is again a great perfect 80s character protagonist name, gets stolen away and Rick has to save her halfway through, or rather, when you're entering the last third of Splatterhouse, you find Jennifer in like a lounge, or a study, like a library type thing, on like a psychiatrist chaise lounge thing, and she's like, "Oh, thank you, my darling, thank you," and then she immediately like doubles over, and the soundtrack intensifies, and she transforms into this huge, hideous creature with like its brain spilling out and one big eyeball and it's, like growing nails, and you have to kill her. And while you're
Yeah,
fighting her, she keeps transforming back into Jennifer and being like, "Help me, help me!" And you fucking beat her monster fight ass to death, and then she crumbles to ash in your hands, and then you have to go and complete your revenge and burn down the house. And that's like this is like early in video game history. This is like a total subversion of the kind of like unthinking, like, yeah, okay, I'm in, save the girl, whatever, kind of like ancillary plot, and you're like, oh fuck, I felt like it. These people are the people making the game were actually wanting to make this like proper horror experience, and it's so perfectly delicious.
it
And
really.
we're yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to start talking about the sequels, so you.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I just love when you get to that scene. Your initial thought, because it is so ingrained. Your princess is in another castle. That kind of thing is so ingrained in early video game lore that you think like, oh, this is the house playing a trick on him. It's not really her. It's like some monster that looks like her, and you're gonna kill the monster, and you're gonna keep going, and then yeah, there is this genuinely heartbreaking moment where she dies in your arms and sort of dissolves to ash, and you're like, what? Like, how? It is remarkably sincerely dark for a arcade game released in 1988, and I love it.
Hmm. Um, and when it when the sequels start to roll in, it starts getting weird in the sense that in the same way that like weird like Italian horror movie sequels will get, and it starts creating these gaps in sense. Similar to what I was talking about in Puppet Spanking. Whoa, am I realizing something here? It starts creating these gaps in sense that an imaginative fan will want to start filling in the same way that like if you've ever seen Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery, that's a movie that very explains very little, but there's a lot of room to like imagine like what was going on there. But Splatterhouse 2, it's been a couple of years. Jennifer's dead. The terror mask after Rick burns down the mansion and beats the shit out of the big weird monster like giant zombie that lives underneath the mansion, the melting face and hands. The terror mask falls off his face and it like shatters. But then a few years later, the mask starts whispering to him, driving him insane, saying that she doesn't have to die and that he should go back and that there's another house, there's another mansion in those woods on an island in a lake. So Rick goes back, he finds the terror mask again, it attaches to him. He fights his way through the burnt remains of the original mansion with these blistering, really beautifully designed, blistered, vomiting like remains of the zombies from the first one. And then this just like big fat creature that is it looks like the Deadly Spawn from the movie The Deadly Spawn, and then going through all these tunnels. And basically, the idea is that there was Dr. West, but then there was another doctor called Dr. Mueller. Now, like these are differences in translation. So I think in the original Japanese game, the idea is that you fight your way through the mansion, you kill the zombified remains of Dr. West, you find his second mansion that he had for doing rituals, the second smaller house that he had on an island for doing rituals, and you do a ritual and open the gates of hell, and you get Jennifer back, but something follows you back from hell, and it's this thing called the Evil One, and you have to beat the shit out of it. And then there's a lake monster in that one as well, which is really cool. And then in the third one, it's Rick and Jennifer had a kid, and Rick joined Wall Street and made a bunch of money, and he got a mansion of his own. And but on the night of this like super duper like rare cosmic eclipse, the evil one manifest tries to steal his son to like birth itself fully into the world. Jennifer gets infected by like brain-eating worms, and then Rick gets the mask back. So you actually have to fight through your own mansion under a time limit to save your family and defeat the evil one, and then ultimately have your own showdown with the terror mask. Because that's clearly the real evil that keeps drawing everything back into Rick's life. And like the origins of the Terror Mask are now I hadn't seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure when I was younger. It's the mask from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Dr. West
Mm.
found it in an Aztec pyramid, and he was able to use it to reverse engineer all of the Lovecraftian horrors that he was able to pull these entities from beyond. Um, and it's just all very fertile ground for a overexcited imaginative horror fan to go wild. But something I find interesting about it is we've never really gotten like it's not the biggest like most popular old arcade game ever, but it does have a feverish cult following. We don't get Splatterhouse likes. We don't get games where you play as a big hulking monster punching creatures into goop in really highly rendered um depictions of blood and gore and monstrosity. And I think that's because Splatterhouse is the way Splatterhouse synthesized all that slasher, gore, and horror imagery. It did it so well that it's actually kind of hard to iterate on it because it's like the idea of like, okay, who is my superpowered protagonist? I don't know, maybe they could be a vampire. No, that's not the same vibe. Like it's really hard to get the vibe of the Rick, the Jason Voorhees analog right, and then make it something more original that doesn't just feel like a ripoff. It's hard to come up with a good origin for the creatures, a good setting. Like like I've tried. Like I make indie games. I do have kind of a Splatterhouse like I want to make set in the video wasteland that I was working on for many years, but had to scrap it for being too ambitious. That I want to bring it back as something way simpler. But I do think it's a testament to how great Splatterhouse is that no one's really been able to kind of like iterate on it in the way that people have been able to iterate on Streets of Rage or Metroid or whatever. It's just such lightning in a bottle that I hope we do. Like I want a million Splatterhouse likes. I want that visceral experience and that aesthetic experience like every day of my life, you know what I mean? But it seems like people have really struggled to do that.
Yeah, it is so interesting how it from the outside looking in, it feels very much like a game of its time because it is incorporating, like you're a guy in a hockey mask swinging a machete at monsters. and it has all of that influence of slasher films and Italian horror and zombie horror and Lovecraft's in there. And I mean, you mentioned JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This was made by Japanese creators, and it has that Japanese influence as well. Uh, so it feels like, oh, this is absolutely the most 1988 game ever made. But when you play it, it really has a singular quality to it that I was not expecting and was very taken by. Um, so you mentioned in the middle of talking about this game this sort of semi epiphany maybe about Puppet's Banquet and about the gaps in the story that it encourages you to fill in yourself. Um, have you given a lot of thought to what Splatterhouse gave you as a creator that echoes in your work now, or is it just sort of the background radiation of your imagination?
I think Splatterhouse is almost just like a high that they're trying to like pay tribute, no, like almost like chase and pay tribute to. You know what I mean? But I didn't realize that like yeah, I really me and my friends like me and people from the Splatterhouse forum. Some people from the Splatterhouse forum started our own little club on Facebook many, many years ago when that was still the place to be, where we'd write like fake movie scripts for fake movie trailers and like ideas for movies and post like deep cuts of like movie soundtracks and stuff like that and started trying to form uh a little collective of like but with this very much like and like almost like mentoring each other in and trying to distill almost like in a laboratory this essence of whatever it was that we were that drew us together. This thing of the recognizing the mutilator fall break reference and being like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's me. That whatever that is. Splatterhouse led me to a bunch of other people who kind of felt that as well, and really like we created this little like laboratory where we just worked for years on refining what exactly we wanted to contribute to that, grand tradition. And sometimes I feel like stuff like Puppets Banquet and Crime Crook, I'm really proud of them and those feel really unique to like my voice, but I almost feel like I'm betraying the splatterpunk, when I write something so highfalutin or whatever, you know what I mean? I
Mm.
I I I feel like I should be writing more shit like Spook Show or whatever, where it's real, just like. But we've had an interesting thing now that we've had in like the last um 15, 20 years that the Decrepit Ritual was definitely grappling with was the over commercialization and consumption of that old style of movie of the like back in those days, the days when I was like big huge Splatterhouse fan and like on the forums and everything. I was in love with everything from the typeface on movie posters to how credits came up and how like everything about that felt magical because you could learn about an old movie like Demons and you could look it up and someone had uploaded it on YouTube. There wasn't a Vinegar Syndrome special edition Blu-ray and Funko Pop like it wasn't this nerd industry now. So being now in 2025, a lot of that stuff that felt magical has had the magic sucked out of it by commercialism and just blind consumerism. So maybe I shouldn't feel so guilty that I'm not not just I don't have my head in the fucking nostalgia mines, just being like, oh, remember slasher movies? I don't know. I feel like that magic still exists. That's what like the Decrepit Ritual was all about. Someone who'd lost that magic trying to find it, who doesn't even isn't even trying to find it, it finds them, kind of a thing. I don't know. It's hard to talk about. Just gesturing at stuff, I guess. It's hard to find words for these things because they're so ephemeral.
Well, yeah, it's definitely. I know what you're talking about, though. I remember being a being a teenager and going to the video store and seeing a box with for a horror movie that I had never heard of, and just going, "What's this?" and taking it home and pressing play and feeling like you had found some sort of hidden knowledge that now there are so many people, and I mean I'm part of this. I write about horror films for a living, so I am in the business of like dredging up these things and telling people you have to go watch this, you have to give this its due respect. But there is something really magical about the feeling that you evoke in Decrepit Ritual, this idea of like, what is on this tape? What's it going to do to me? And having a transformative experience through, you talked about it earlier, that feeling that reality starts to blur. And I think that both Decrepit Ritual and Puppets Banquet have Splatterhouse in their DNA. There is an ambition and a willingness in your prose to mash the human body into so many different strange permutations that are terrifying and yet also just so invigorating as a horror fan to read Puppets Banquet in particular. And I feel like I can see that through the lens of Splatterhouse, because it is just such an unbridled, I mean, not completely unbridled because there's a structure to it, but there is just such a sense of pure horror imagination moving through that game that I think I see in your work. Like I don't want you to tell me exactly how your imagination works, Val, because then I get to read the books and go, oh my God, how did someone pull this out and give it shape and form? And that's part of what I love about these books. Um, so before we let you go, I know you just mentioned being in a little bit of a creative, being more in the real world than the imagined world right now. But you've talked about the Video Wasteland universe. You said you have other books you want to write. Can you tell us anything at all about what you're working on right now?
Oh, yeah, I'm working on a few things. I'm working on the other day I started writing another Video Wasteland story. It's going to be more of a straight up swords and sorcery thing, not a lot of this esoteric kind of like the gates are open there. The esoteric process opened the gates. This is just going to be a straight up swords and sorcery type story about a really shitty person going on a quest that is not going to end well for them, kind of a thing. I have another like kind of Irish book, almost like a cyberpunk type thing that I might start writing soon, and then another book that's more about like almost more like a gender type thing about a bunch of girls who are playing like a band RPG, and there's going to be like killer dolls and stuff. I think that'll be kind of fun. And I'm working on Video Wasteland. It was an RPG and it will be an RPG, but I've pivoted to making it like a Trench Crusade style mini skirmish game. So I've been playtesting that a bunch, and that's been really fun. So that's like making a mini skirmish game so expensive, so I'm just trying to figure out how I can do that on a shoestring budget kind of a thing. So I'm working on all that, and then just making more music, and there's another thing. I'm making a video game. Making a Contra type shooter. Just with the skills and the tech that I have. So that's just going very slowly because I'm just super busy. But you can play level ones on my itch.io, surgeryhead.itch.io. The game's called Dark Shock Core. It's set in the Video Wasteland universe. I think level one's the most polished level, definitely so far. That's why I released it. But yeah, that's all the stuff I think that's all the stuff that I'm working on right now. There might be something else that's dropped out of my head, but that's the basic thing. Just trying to get another book out, trying to finish my game and my music and stuff. Really been focusing on trying to get my live music game up and really up my game there, and being able to play more shows and make them really cool, worth seeing. So yeah, just lots of bits and pieces going on.
Our guest has been multi hyphenate Valkyrie Loughcrewe. Val, before we let you go, will you let people know what's the best place they can find you online to follow your work?
Probably a little unfortunately due to its complicity in the current political situation, but Instagram. Val Loughcrewe Creations on Instagram. I'm also on Blue Sky, a gore sorcerer on Blue Sky, and then I have a Tumblr, Surgery Head Tumblr. So I'm around. I also have a Patreon. If anyone wants to chuck me a few bucks, it would certainly be helpful. Yeah, and my Patreon has a Discord, so it's a very small, very chill Discord. So if anyone wants to join there and shoot the shit, feel free. Just don't be a weirdo, or I'll ban you. And that's the crack. Yeah.
Val, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for being on the show.
Brilliant. Cheers. That was really fun.
Thanks again to Valkyrie Loughcrewe for being on the show. It was great talking to them about their work. Such a fun conversation. Decrepit Ritual is out now from Ghoulish Books, and Puppets Banquet is out now from Tenebrous Press. I highly recommend both of them. They're fantastic. I also recommend going and checking out Val's electronic music project, Surgery Head. And please do go follow Val online. Keep track of everything that they are doing. They are a multi-hyphenate creator cranking out just amazing work, and I can't wait to see what they write next. And if you want to keep track of what we're doing next, what we do here every single week, the best way to do that is to follow us on Blue Sky. We are at scareshapedus.bsky.social over there. That is where you will find giveaways, announcements of new episodes and new guests, and of course, all of the episodes that we do. We drop new episodes every Wednesday at noon Central. And if you like the show, please tell your friends about us, share our episodes, let people know that you're having a good time with this. And if you wouldn't mind, head over to the podcasting platform of your choice and leave us a 5-star review. That always helps us to get more exposure in the podcasting world, which helps us get more listeners, which helps us get more cool guests and keep doing this show that I love doing for y'all. You can also email me anytime you want, scaresthatshapeduspodcast@gmail.com. If you have a question that you'd like me to address on the show, something fun and horror themed that you just want me to ramble about, I'm very good at rambling, as listeners of this show know. You can also recommend guests if you have something you want me to read, have something you want me to see. Always happy to hear from everybody. We're also on Facebook. We are The Scares That Shaped Us over on Facebook, and we are The Scares That Shaped Us on YouTube. If that is how you prefer to listen to podcasts, head over there and hit those like and subscribe buttons. We appreciate you. If you would like us to do more content over there, like video content, that's definitely something that I've thought about doing in the past. Maybe we'll actually get something cracking. So if you like that, let me know. Maybe we'll see what we can do about that. That is it for me this week. We will be back next week with a brand new episode on July 2nd. I'm not quite ready to tell you who the guest is, but if all goes well with the scheduling, it is going to be a big one, and you will not want to miss it. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I'm Matthew Jackson, and this is The Scares That Shaped Us.